Welcome friends to another 40k video. Today we take a tour of the Imperial Palace on Terra, home to the Master of Mankind, the Custodians and so much more. Let's start with what this place is in M40. It's the heart of the throne world of Terra, the centre of Imperial power and the tendrils of its administratum. It's less like a fortress and more like its own hive city. It covers what on old Earth would have been the Himalayan mountains and now is called the Himalayas. It towers now above all, even the mountain range on which it is built. On old Earth, the highest point of the Himalayas is 5.498 miles, and from the heights we go to the heart, the Sanctum Imperialis, the hall of the Golden Throne, where the Master of Mankind wastes away, whilst the throne keeps him alive. Mechanicus priests keep it working, and in a large arena in front of the throne, psychers are brought in on black ships from across the Imperium, and they are soul-bound to the Emperor, and there enter his service. For its origins, we must look at the Age of Strife, when warp storms cut off Sol and other nearby systems. For around a 5,000-year period, war existed there between techno-barbarians. They were only united under the watch of the Emperor. When this was achieved, guilds of masons raised the Imperial Palace as an incredible statement of unity. The world laid to waste by so much war was reborn in the building, a vision from the heavens of gold and silver. Those that built it wept upon its finished look. But it did not just reach for the sky, it also burrowed deep into the planet's mantle. We are told the palace has over 1 million chambers in it altogether, and in M40 it's protected with fortifications. This complex is split into two security perimeters, known as the outer and inner palaces, and are protected with monstrous defensive weapons. Rogel Dawn himself had his hand in the design of many, and the palace today still bears the scars of the past from the siege of Terra. The density of the people in the palace is incredibly high, higher than most hive cities. Humanity in its billions live there, and within the palace, working for the many branches of the Adeptus Terra, overseeing the far-reaching lives of mankind. Along with the complexity in the people is the complexity in the buildings. The byways are many, they twist and turn within the palace, and are only known all by the custodians. There are ravines built to 500 stories high, and domes so vast that they have their own weather systems. The outer palace is a hard living slum. Those with no employment scrape by from begging for scraps from the tables of those in higher positions. Within this zone, the custodians step back, and the Adeptus Arbites dole out their justice. Their focus is on the many buildings of the government. It is there that people queue an awful long time for employment with the Adeptus Ministratum. Even the lowliest job will change their lives. It's better than the fight to survive for those who live in the slums. As you can imagine, these people are desperate, and the Arbites are there to suppress any riot that emerges. Within the Imperial Palace, there is the Administratum. Many toil away in the archives there for the length of their lives. The archives are not just one, they are many, and some are as long and as deep as a kilometre below the surface of Terra, and their workers keep mankind's empire running smoothly. Also here is the Senatorum Imperialis, where the 12 High Lords of Terra, who rule the Imperium in the name of the Divine Emperor, give orders which travel throughout the Administratum, and from there to all other government organisations. The inner palace contains the Sanctum Imperialis, and it is protected by the Eternity Gate, which is forged from adamantium, layered with ceramite to gain extra protection from weapons fire. To either side stand two Titans, members of the Legio Ignatum, guarding it. A grand hall where it leads to the Eternity Gate, and it's dubbed the Hall of Heroes, and contained within are banners for every Astra Militarum regiment and every Space Marine chapter who has served the Master of Mankind. The outer layer of the Eternity Gate is covered in gold that had been shaped by great artists to show an icon of the Emperor during the Great Crusade. He's depicted as being victorious, triumphant over all the foes mankind faces in the galaxy. Custodes, numbering 300 and dubbed the Companions, guard the Sanctum Imperialis. And as I believe I've mentioned elsewhere, the Companions was the name for a number of friends of Alexander the Great. They were dubbed his companions, so there might be a historical reference there. Erda, the mother of the Primarchs, also said that the Emperor likes to call upon, we'll say, iconography, images of the past, to perhaps time to it, and also to help communicate with people using that history that might be known to draw upon to glory himself a little bit. There are many different parts of the palace, and we will go over some of the more interesting ones now. The first is the Katabatic Plain. This area surrounds the palace and was levelled using terraforming technology when the palace was made. Nothing has been built against the wall due to ancient law, and of course, there is also the precedent in history of it being a smart military strategy to not give your enemy something to hide behind on the approach to the walls, somewhere to fire tank rounds at you from, for example. Next up, we look at the Lion's Gate. This portal was part of the outer palace but leads into the inner. It also helps protect the nearby spaceport. The top of the gate has two gilded beasts rising up to fight each other. After the heresy, Dawn replaced the beasts with giant grey donjons or towers to which someone can retreat during a siege, and comports provide more protection. I like here how the heraldry is slowly being stripped away for the warfare aspect. Here, if the walls could talk, they would speak of the Siege of Terra and the battle that took place between the White Scars and the Traitor Legions. Jagatai Khan led a night attack there and held it in a pivotal moment during the siege. To return to the spaceport, such is its size, it extends into the upper atmosphere of Terra and has an uncountable number of docking places. Another feature is the Investiere, an amphitheatre open to the night sky of Terra. It once held statues of all 20 Primarchs. 2 vanished for the 2nd and 11th Legions, and later the Traitor Legions were also removed. That's a lot of empty places. The Hall of Leng is an intriguing place. It's said to be the Emperor's favourite place, where he could measure the angles of space and time. Past and present have mingled in this place, going back to ancient times. There's a place similar to this where he creates the spears that Russ and Valdor use. I'm not sure if it actually is the same place or that's just something my brain's connecting up. The Hall of Victories contains objects from across the history of humanity, showing what it has achieved. Contained in the cabinets there were ancient human-made pottery, shattered but marked with fingerprints going back millennia. There was also a navigational circuit from the first warp-abled ships. Another location is the city of Sight, housed within the Emperor's Imperial Palace, and it's home to the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. That's a great one to say. Their psychers learned to harness their abilities as they were surrounded by the glory of what mankind had achieved. Within the city at its heart is the conduit. That is where all intergalactic communication is centered. Thousands of infosites receive the messages and sift and pass them on. And one I can't leave out is the Avenue of Eternal Remembrance. This avenue is 100 kilometers long and made from what was left of Chaos Titans during the heresy. Very appropriate, considering how many Sanguinius took down. And it is built to honor Sanguinius, the Great Angel, fallen Primarch of the Blood Angels. It leads to the final gateway into the Sanctum Imperialis. Banners line its approach, banners going back to men such as Lord Solar Macarius. Then you'll meet the double doors of the gate, sheathed in gold and guarded by the Titans, and past that the Emperor on his golden throne. It sits beneath what was once Mount Everest. Then in the Tower of Heroes is the Bell of Souls, a massive iron bell covered in dark runes. It tolls when the greatest heroes of the Imperium die, and its noise will be heard by millions across Terra. Clearly some form of perhaps warp-based sorcerer there for it to cast its noise out so far, but it rings rarely. Nearby Imperial servants must be locked away. To prevent the destruction of their eardrums and their own deaths, legends say the Emperor hears it in his slumber and sheds a tear when he does. Another grim reminder of the past is a column of glory. It's covered with the power armour from many loyalist legions and the bones of those who fell. In the armour, skulls stare back from their open faceplates, a monument to their sacrifice. Pilgrims such as Psychos will visit there, and I would think Marines if they ever get a moment from their endless duty. Such is the place's importance that custodians stand nearby to guard this silent, grim monument to the dead. Another tower of note is the Tower of Hegemon. Inside is the custodian's watch room, where consoles stream constant information for the watch. This system makes connections that might otherwise not be seen. The custodians then sift through this information for potential dangers to their constant duty. We have to mention here the Blackstone prison, where road psychers are imprisoned. The stone prevents the psychers using their abilities, as it's sensitive to the warp. Then there is the secret meeting chamber of the Officio Assassinorum, located within the inner palace. Here the different assassin heads meet, overseen by the Grand Master. Now finally, and one of my favourites, the Dark Cells, where the Adaptive Custodies, known as the Shadow Keepers, keep an ever-present vigil. They guard rune-locked portals that house terrors from the deepest parts of old night. Even were someone to walk past the cells, that person would feel dread. But this, when the Great Rift opened, became worse. The warp energy that seeped from it allowed some of the cells to be emptied, and the Lovecraftian horrors, at least that's what I imagine them to be like, held there for 10,000 years inside, escaped. And on that note, we bid goodbye to our tour of the Emperor's Imperial Palace. Were there any notable locations that I missed? I tried to cherry pick some of my favourite ones. Have you visited the Imperial Palace and penetrated the security of this Sanctum Imperialis? Comment down below.